Okay, whatever comes up is like trust, right? Like trust that it will shift, trust that it will be okay, trust that there will be an opening again, that, I think that often is what we're all lacking. And I'm also speaking for myself. I think it's almost my biggest life lesson. It's like about trust. Often our emotions, we feel them. Maybe they express themselves with shapes and forms and colors and so on. So I see that art actually through the hands, like through the body, my clients are able to connect to their selves, to their inner world, and then that actually gets a shape. And it really says much more than like emotion, than words, right?
This silence is louder than a supernova breakup playlist.
Incoming communication might be your vibe. Initiating ship scan, subject identified, Mieke Vander Heyden. Coordinates, nomadic frequencies, expatriate currents. Psycho-emotional topography indicates high fluidity. Creative regeneration protocols active. Therapeutic resonance aligns with art-based neural repair. Warning. This traveler carries stories in her sinews. Approach with depth. Scan complete. The Council welcomes you.
Captain LA here of the Ethereal Voyager. It's nice to connect with you.
Likewise, I love it here.
Awesome. And so every time I encounter a new traveler amongst the stars, I created a game that's sort of like an icebreaker. It's simple. It's the Cosmic Wheel of Wisdom. So we spin the wheel, it'll land on a random question, and you get to answer. You ready?
All right. Yes, let's wait to decide.
All right. And at the wheel here, and let's give it a spin. The Cosmic Wheel of Wisdom. Let's see what you get. What would
Oh,
your spaceship look like if you designed one?
all
Interesting.
right. Yes, I love it. My spaceship would have a lot of comfort and have soft materials, and I like it very warm. I love the tropics. I want it to be really fast, silent. I love silence. Um, I want it to be an open space, so people that I love can easily join and get in. Um, I love white with some colory touches, and also like live inside, some plants, maybe a cat. I don't have a cat, but I'm dreaming from it, so why not? Um, yeah, comfortable
Right.
sofas for sure.
Yes, those are nice visuals. I'm someone who definitely likes open space, so I like that,
Hmm.
and I definitely have my space companions somewhere along the vessel. My dog and cat, they're the best
Amazing.
travelers.
Yes.
All right, so first question, just jump right into it. Um,
Hmm.
so how do you think movement can be grounding instead of destabilizing?
Yeah. Well, if we move, then we move with our body. Like even breathing, it's like moving with our body, right? So we are also connecting with our body, and that actually is the grounding aspect. Because of gravity, we are connected to the ground, right? And it has a regulating aspect at the same time. Like when I even go with my intention to my feet or my body, only that in itself is already grounding. And honestly, I think we're always in movement. It's like impossible to stand 100% still, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I even when I am sitting still, it's like my mind is moving, right?
Yes,
100%
exactly.
of the time. So
Hmm.
yeah, I definitely feel that and resonate with that. And so, like one thing I started incorporating into my morning routine is animalistic movements. So
Awesome.
to help me really connect more with my body, and
Hmm.
it's been great. It really one, it's good for the mind to really have that mind body connection, and
Hmm.
two, it's like playing, right? So it's
Totally.
fun and it doesn't feel like a workout, and those are the best kind of workouts.
Hmm. Yes, yes, when it's fun. Otherwise, it's like a core.
Yeah, and nobody likes that.
No.
So let's talk about being able to embrace discomfort and
Hmm.
the feeling of impermanence.
Okay. Can you explain me
Yes.
impermanence, what you mean with it? Because it's an
Instability.
English term. Instability?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that's easier. Thanks.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, as a non-native speaker.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
No worries. How to embrace? Well, I think life in itself is often not so comfortable, right? Because everything is unexpected and we are usually not so well prepared, not emotionally, well, not mentally. So everything is suddenly in a way, even if we expect it, still it's a shock. Like perhaps we know someone is going to die, but still when it happens, we are not prepared for it, right? So I think it's inherent in life itself. And I think it's about embracing life and that life is just full of change and also discomfort. I think like embracing discomfort is like in the beginning it's a kind of a shock because there is a change. So it's giving ourselves the time to transition into that something new. And as soon as we are actually used to the new, then we are in our comfort zone again, right? And I think that are like the ways of life. And I think it's the same. I just answered this, the first part, but I think it's also like the second part because we always have we want to be stable. Like also, if you look at systems, we always want to get to a kind of stability, status quo, because that is the easiest and then something happens and then it's unstable again and then we're always looking for a way to adapt to it, right? That's a transition phase. We adapt to the new thing until there is a new stability again. And I think that's happens like how to say, like around us, but that also happens within us, right? Like when I'm overwhelmed, I'm losing my center, I feel like I'm not stable anymore. So it's like, how can I find my ground again? How can I find my inner anchor?
Mm. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I feel like being uncomfortable allows us to grow, to adapt, and it really pushes us to transform. I feel like that's when you become the greatest alchemist. So when you're like dealing with
Yeah.
stuff and you're like, well, how do I, you know, take this situation and transform it into a better situation for me? But also, like you said, every time we reach that point of, say, like homeostasis, then it's always something that's like, all right, well, you're a little too comfortable. Let's shake it up.
Exactly. And that's when we grow. You're totally
Yes.
right. Yeah.
Yes. I love that. So if your healing process was a journey, where would it take you?
To myself.
Mm, mm,
Because I think through all the things that are happening around us, in us, it's about discovering who we are and how we can deal with it the easiest. So I always think that the answers are within us and in ourselves. And the more that we discover who we are, which is like sometimes really like discovering, taking all the layers off, right? Then life becomes more easy, and we're also getting to the pain spots as well because we're discovering the discomfort and the pains and all the emotions and all of that. But I think giving that actually the space in itself is the healing, and that brings us closer to ourselves because we don't need those protection layers anymore.
mm. Yeah, you're right. It's like definitely you can equate it to an onion, and as you get deeper and deeper to the center, you get to the good stuff, all the good trauma that you've been tucking away. So let's talk about traveling and just because earlier we alluded to movement. How does
hmm
actual like physical traveling help us facilitate emotional healing?
hmm Yeah. Well, for that, I can talk about my own process, if that's okay. So before I had a regular life, just normal job, living in Belgium, friends, boyfriend, whatever. And at a certain point, I came into a life crisis. For me, it manifested in a burnout. Um, what I realize now, looking back, is that my healing actually started when I decided to travel. So I felt like I actually need the distance, the physical distance, from my home environment to actually find myself again. And I see that happening also with a lot of people I'm working with who are often nomads and expats. Like people often think like, oh, they're running away from something. I think it's the opposite. They're running towards something. And maybe they don't know what yet, but what they usually discover is themselves. And that was also the same for me.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that, especially what you said about this idea of I consider myself a nomad, and so
Yeah.
like ever since I was able to like go to university, I was like I'm out of here, and from there I just traveled around, and a lot of people seen it as being unstable, and I'm like,
hmm
I'm not unstable. I'm just really exploring a life and all that it
Yes.
has to offer, and through that I'm like you said, exploring myself. And
Uh-huh.
and I realized it took me like all that time until now, probably last year, to realize like, oh, you know what, that actually I've been secure, because like I said, you hear that often, so it made me think like, am I running away from something? Am I unstable, unstable? But I realized
hmm
like, no, I actually, it helped me learn so much about myself, and I've grown a lot because of that, and you know. Also, it helps with your perception of the world and with people and building connections. So, yeah, I totally resonate with that.
Totally, totally. What you did there was like you left your comfort zone or what is like the normal, right? And that is when you discover many other things that other people cannot imagine as long as they're staying in their comfort zone.
Mm,
Yeah.
absolutely right. And so let's talk about, we're in a transition, because when I think about that a lot of the insecurities stem from, family, right? And all of that, and
Uh-huh.
going back to childhood. And
Yes.
so how do you think our childhood experiences shape our emotional foundation?
For me, that is a truth. Um, in a sense that if we have grown up in a situation where we didn't feel safe, then or by times it's not always black and white, obviously, then we develop some defense mechanisms, and it will determine how we actually connect with the world around us, right? So it always has an impact on the connection, and that is actually how it shapes how we are standing in the world and how we can connect with other people, how we can open our hearts and so on. And that's kind of like a blueprint that we bring into our adulthood as well. But I also think that we still can learn to rewire, right? And we can still develop other skills. It's not because uh, my childhood was not safe that I cannot learn to feel safe in the world right now. Because the difference is that now I am an adult and I have more tools and I can rely on myself. I'm not a dependent little being anymore, right? So, yeah, I think it definitely has a big impact, but I also think we have a lot of margin to still develop and change.
Yeah, I I feel like there's always room to grow and evolve, until we die, right? We're constantly learning, we're constantly
Yeah.
evolving, and I definitely believe in rewiring your brain, or breaking generational cycles and all of that, or trauma. Um, I see it really prevalent
Hmm.
now that a lot of people are really, taking the steps necessary to say, okay, it stops with me, and I want to change the outcome for the future generation. And
Yeah.
fortunately and unfortunately, I'm that one in my family.
Well, good on you.
Yeah, it's not easy, but
I know.
it is nice to see how it actually leads out into my environment. And so it's really cool to actually see the physical change, right?
Hmm. Yeah, totally.
So I want to talk about, and it was great because I had another guest that said the same thing, that I was like thinking about this theory, right? About words and sounds. And I'm like, you know, like when I had my Kundalini awakening, like I just came like overwhelmed with emotions to the point where sometimes it's hard to like put it into words, right? It's just
Yeah.
too much energy that words can't even express it.
Hmm.
So I found other ways to kind of express it. So, what do you think the role in art therapy is, for expressing things that cannot be expressed through words?
Exactly. I often find that with my clients that it is difficult to grasp because verbal language is totally different than our inner language or emotional language in a way, right? Often our emotions, we feel them. Maybe they express themselves with shapes and forms and colors and so on. So I see that art actually through the hands, like through the body, um, my clients are able to connect to their selves, to their inner world, and then that actually gets a shape, and it really says much more than like emotion than words, right? Often, like I see their drawing, and it just totally like I feel something, I reveal something, I resonate with it much more than if they would give like a long description, right? So I think it liberates them, and I also feel it for myself, like if I do an art project or something, or I'm expressing myself through movement, I'm not in my mind, I just am, I am tapping into something else, I am connected to source, however you want to call it, and it gives a different quality.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely love art. I find that, like you said, that's the best way we can, at this state in our beings, express
Uh-huh.
the things that cannot be expressed through words. And it's that moment where you, like you said, like either hear a song, or see a painting or a sculpture, or even a movie or whatever, and it pulls those emotions like without words. You instantly feel that connection. And
Hmm.
that's why I love art, and I feel like it is so powerful, in healing, especially because, like you
Yeah.
said, it's a release. um, so what made you say, I want to incorporate art into the healing process for my clients?
Hmm. Well, first I actually went through theater and dance, and then I thought, well, what about the hands? What
Mm-hmm.
about the creation process? So for me, it was just like complementary, and I got more and more curious, right? And I also feel like going from dance to art and so on, like it's easy to switch as well. And with every new creative language that I learn how to connect with for my clients, I feel it really is a plus for them, but also for me in reaching them, right? So I think any kind of art is really a plus for me as a facilitator.
Oh yeah, I love that. So on that, if your emotions were a painting,
Oh,
where would it take you?
my emotions were a painting. Where would it
And
take
what would
me?
that look like? Give us a
What would it
visual.
look like? Yeah. Okay, the visual that comes to mind is kind of like a firework with different colors, but like very bright. And the colors have some shiverings in it, you know, like different textures of light. Um, I've never seen the painting. I just see it now in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's as if it's bringing some light onto something. Yeah, like
Oh, yeah.
revealing.
That's really cool and really descriptive. So as you were describing that, I'm getting like the visuals in my head of maybe like a black backdrop and maybe colorful, like explosive fireworks, and as you said, the shimmers or the maybe you would say glitter or whatever, the light reflecting off, and yeah, that's really cool. I love that.
Yeah, and I think like just talking about it right now, thinking about it, it's like I feel myself as different aspects. So it's more like myself that shows itself in the different subpersonalities or the different emotions or the different thoughts or whatever, right? It's kind of like the multi dimensions that I feel that I am and
Mm,
that we all are, if we believe it or not.
right. Yes, I think that exactly what you said. I think people forget that we are all spiritual beings having a spiritual experience, whether you believe it or not.
Yeah.
Threshold breach detected. Initiating Council or Path.
Wanderers of the cosmos. Tired of hyperspace hustle and black hole burnout? The Intergalactic Council proudly presents the Intergalactic Nomad Passport Program. Endorsed by Nomadic healing specialists MDH, this program grants you unrestricted access to the ancient art of movement-based healing. Travel across timelines, dimensions, and emotional landscapes without losing your center. First 100 applicants receive a complimentary cosmic compass because getting lost in the multiverse sounds romantic until it's not. Go where the cosmos take you. Just remember to breathe.
And if you accepted it, well, I would say it makes your life easier, but eventually it'll make your life easier.
Hmm. Yeah.
So let's talk about why awareness is key to emotional mastery.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's interesting because I was just talking about it with a client just before this podcast, and it really was about like when someone is not able to capture themselves, like what is happening in the moment, and it's difficult to change because they're in the experience. So what we do in psychotherapy, but also in meditation and other kind of spiritual practices, right? It's about like creating that distance that you can become the observer of yourself, that you can watch yourself and see what is actually happening in the moment. And then you can actually slow down and then you can create a choice. Then you're not responding reactive anymore, but you're responding to the situation, right? And it will be totally different. Um, it will not be necessarily from anger or feeling not enough or jealousy or whatever, right? It's more like then you make a choice. What's the part I actually want to respond from? And then that's actually the training, which is like, I want to connect from my adult part that feels good enough, that feels love, that is able to express their feelings like, you look, honey, here, you actually hurt me. This wasn't really nice, which is totally different than how dare you, right? So I think the awareness is totally necessary to create the emotional intelligence. It really starts with that.
Mm. And so, if people, uh, for instance, you had a
Hmm.
client and they're really stuck in that state of trying to be like maybe they're working on being aware in the moment, but they're still getting triggered, like what tips and tricks would you offer them
Yeah.
to help them through that?
Yeah. Well, actually, I start working with people on the awareness part. So I would give them like a registration exercise, very concrete, like, okay, describe the situation. And then also like, what was your thought? What was your emotion? what did you feel in your body? What was your behavior, right? Because like it's like tearing everything apart. It's like slowing down so you can actually see what happened to me. And doing that often will actually help with creating that external or internal observer that I talked about. And that actually will help to recognize when they are in the situation like, oh, wait a minute, I'm doing it again. Or like, oh, the other time I did this, that was the outcome, I didn't like it. Now I have something else. And then obviously we will discuss all of these things, right? So yeah, it's really about first recognizing it. And sometimes we need to write about it, talk about it to start to understand ourselves. And then I also go to the needs because we get reactive because the needs is not met. Um, and that is sometimes a little bit digging. And that's like you leave the story. It's not about the dishes that wasn't done, it's about something else. It's about you don't feel respected, you don't feel whatever. And that's what usually people don't communicate about. And that would help them much more if they would talk about those things.
Yeah, it was a long journey for me to get to the point of being like, okay, hold up, this is like, it's not the action, but the whole story, like you said, behind it and everything that led up to this action, and being like in the moment, like, oh, okay, so maybe this is what I'm really feeling, and it's not about, that was a good example, dishes in the sink, right? It's like, why, but it's like, no, it's not about that. Maybe it's about, a lack of respect. Maybe I
Hmm.
feel like, oh, you're not respecting the time I spend cleaning, and then you just throw dishes in the sink, like that.
Exactly.
When I got to that point of being in the moment, because something very important you said, it is a practice. You have
Hmm.
to work at it all the
Yes.
time, but it's that moment where you're in that situation and you instantly become that observer, and you can see
Hmm.
everything and like, oh, okay, yeah, well, this is how I feel in this moment, and I can actually relate that to the person in a way that isn't going to trigger them, or you know just in a way where we can both have open communication. And that is like that moment where you feel like, all right, yes, I've grown.
Yeah, totally. And I also think like we're humans, right? Like triggers will happen even if we work on it all the time for no matter how many years. Just the time frame that we get back to our center is gonna be shorter and shorter, right? Or maybe like the big explosions will become less and less. So I also feel like it's about giving ourselves a break as well, that we don't need to be perfect in this process either. We just do the best that we can. And it is a practice forever as we're alive, I think.
Forever. Yes, forever. And something else that you just said there that was really important is being kind to ourselves, really, in a way.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, so, in your practice dealing with people, what where do you put the importance of uh, really being kind? I guess it was another word, but it totally left my head.
Hmm.
But really being showing ourselves gratitude and graciousness.
Yes. Well, I think that is actually one of the keys. Like often people come to therapy because they want to change something, they want to get rid of something, they want to be different, right? But what we're actually doing is like working on to self-acceptance and self-love. And it's like when they're reaching that, something shifts,
Mm.
and that actually makes them change more than like still like being in a fight with themselves. Why am I tired? Why should I? Why am I not enough? Right? So I think that is like really the key of what we're trying to reach. It's just like we don't usually say like learn self-love in therapy. It's more like I'm gonna learn on impulse control in therapy, but what's actually underneath is working on like the self-love and self-acceptance for sure.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. Sometimes you have to trick people into healing themselves. But no, you're absolutely right. I think that it really is all about accepting ourselves and loving ourselves, because once we do that, that I feel like that's like one of the most powerful things we can do,
Mhm.
to really expand and create whatever life it is that we want, because once you do that, then all the external limitations or restrictions that were imposed upon you kind of fall away, because you're like,
Totally.
hey, I know what I want, and it's okay. That's another thing. Being okay with wanting whatever it is you want, even if it doesn't align with your environment and the people around you. Um,
Mhm.
I think that's really important. And so, another question is, how would you help people who maybe are having a hard time really following their light, their North Star, their purpose, whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
because of external forces?
Yes. Yes. Well, often we are not really connected with our purpose or what we're here to do, what our passions are, what our qualities, because through education, through cultural norms and so on, we have learned to follow a path, right? The path of the society. And then often we develop like perfectionism and this and that. And that actually like takes us away from who we actually are. So it is like a discovering journey that I start with them. It's like, what do I like? And sometimes it's about bringing them back to childhood, all right? Because often childs, they have it like really clear, like this I love, this I don't want, this I want. So we're going to discover that and see like, okay, how can you implement that or gain like develop that in your life right now and see what happens. So it's about self-connection again and
Yes,
experimenting.
yes, I agree with experimentation. I find that I've like learned the most when I just like try stuff,
Yeah.
you just have to try it, because you'll never know. Um, we can have ideas about things, but you got to try it. And especially when it comes to the healing journey and different things, um, I would just say I didn't believe, like, oh, if you tell yourself you love yourself every day, then one day you'll just start feeling the love, and it's like, oh, okay. So it's like, well, okay, well, just try it. You'll never know if it works until you try it. And
Totally.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I definitely try to tell people, put it to the test. If you have any questions about anything, you're unsure, just experiment and see how it goes, because that's not gonna lie.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we're also so different, right? So it's about finding what works for you.
Mm, absolutely right. And so, how how can people use mindfulness
Hmm.
and creativity and movement
Hmm.
to connect with themselves again,
Yes.
that inner child?
Hmm. Exactly. It is about the inner child. Well, the mindfulness actually is about like bringing awareness in to what you're doing, like one focus, or it brings awareness to your body or something you're looking at or something that you're doing. So it's about getting present in the moment, right? And when you're present in a moment, you're connected because there is no distraction. Like you just are. And it's the same for creativity. Like when I paint or whatever, create something, I'm just connected, so connected to a part of myself. I'm just in the present moment and it just happens, the creation. I'm not really thinking about it, right? So I really am. And it's the same with movement. When I just move, I am. And that is how children, they're like dancing through life, right? And that is what we can do as adults as well. And all of that are ways of connecting with yourself again. And it doesn't really matter what shape it has, right? If it's like creativity, if it's theater, if it's whatever, it's more like, what is it for me? Even washing the dishes could become a way of connecting with yourself because it's like about your focus and the awareness of your body, your breath, or dissolving in how would I call it, dissolving into something, right? When you also just are, because that also happens sometimes, the state that you reach when you dance or create something.
Mm. Yes, that state of oneness, interconnectedness, where it's hard to distinguish yourself from all that is,
Hmm.
or flow state, I guess they call it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're so right. Even something as small as it's funny because every morning I like clean the house and just to have a fresh energy each day. But I realize that I really enjoy sweeping because
Awesome.
you're just like doing a movement and then it kind of becomes like a trance like state and it really calms me. It's like, yeah, just
Yeah,
even something as simple as that can really bring you into that flow state. Yeah, I love that.
yeah.
And
That's
so,
interesting that you mentioned that, because repetitive movements actually like invoke the trance state. Exactly. So it totally makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, I just thought it was so funny. Like, I really like sleeping. It's so
Yes,
weird.
great.
So, you know, life can get really chaotic. And
Hmm.
sometimes we have to just wake up and go. Sometimes life is just go, 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 and we don't have that moment to breathe. Um, so, what is some simple techniques or practices that you would recommend when we need to really kind of center ourselves in our busy
Hmm.
lives?
Yes. Well, it even doesn't matter what kind of pace our life has. Like, even if someone doesn't have time to take an hour, I'm like exaggerating, to do a certain practice, it's like, what can you do in those transition times? Because there's always a moment when you're in your car, when you're waiting somewhere, when your computer is starting up, right? And it's like, maybe that are the moments that you can become aware of, like, okay, where's my body? What do I feel, right? What's happening with me? How is my mind? I think it starts with the small check-ins as well.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Like I guess that just ties back in with awareness,
Totally.
or just being present, right? And
Yeah.
someone said something. I heard it many times, but it hit me different. And they're like, "The present is called the present because it's the present." And I'm like,
Yes.
"Yes, you're right. It really is a present." And to tie back into what you said earlier about uncertainty, that we cannot predict what's going to happen, right? Even though our
Hmm.
mind wants to protect us and be like, hey, let's try to give you some comfort by predicting.
Yes.
But we do not know. We will never know. And all we have is the moments right in front of us. I think that is the most important part because also what you said about choice and
Hmm.
what we choose to do in that moment does dictate the future, right? We can only live in the present moment, in my mind, but it took me, let's see, 36 years to get to that point. you know,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that that's powerful. Awareness is definitely the key. And so, for all my other nomads out there who are traveling and exploring and really trying to find themselves, uh, what is the best piece of advice you could give to them when they're going through self-doubt?
Hmm. Also, there, it comes back to the same, connect with yourself, because the doubts, it's a sign of not being connected anymore because of being too much in the mind. So it's like going back to the feeling, to your core, to get your answers, like, what is the right direction for me? What is aligned with my values? How I want to live my life? What do I want to get out of my journey? So I think that really helps. Well, I think that's the core. If it's difficult on your own, because it's easy to say for me right now, right? Just connect with yourself. then sometimes it's also reaching out to someone, because when you speak to someone, you hear yourself speaking as well. So you get an echo back for yourself. So you can feel what resonates, what doesn't, and so on. We can also like co regulate. It's not only about self regulation, we are also social beings. So, how can I ask someone to support me in facilitating connection with myself so I can find my own answers again? And that's actually what happens in all kinds of therapy or coaching, right?
So would you say to people who have a hard time connecting with other people, maybe like introverts,
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
what advice would you give them to kind of reach out for help? I know some people have a hard
Mm-hmm.
time reaching out for help, and I guess we can go back to
Yes.
childhood. Maybe say in their childhood they were told, "Be strong, you can do it," and so they just
Yeah.
kind of went inward and said, "Well, if I reach out for help, maybe then I'm weak. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it shows that I'm not capable." People
Yeah.
dealing with those kinds of things.
Yeah, totally. Well, in that case, I would say, like, who is the person who feels the most safe to you, and start with that person, right? And maybe if that person isn't there or impossible to reach, then it would be like, which part of myself can I speak to? Like, is there maybe an inner part that for me represents my inner wisdom, my intuition, my higher self, however you want to call it? And then maybe start the dialogue writing with that part of you. And that directly reconnects you with yourself, and also like with yeah, your purpose and whatever you're feeling doubts around, right?
Yeah, writing for me is my medium, so that's always a way for me to kind of check in with myself.
Yeah.
Through the year. So usually I like to go by the end of the year, go back to the beginning of the year and just kind of read through and see the growth
Awesome.
written on the page, which is like, wow, it's like sometimes I'll look back like, oh, I can't believe that I felt that way. Or, like I feel totally different now.
Mm-hmm.
Or, oh, yeah, I remember that feeling and maybe I still feel that way. Okay, maybe that's where I need to do some work. um,
Exactly.
and then the other form, I feel like that art is great for channeling
Mm-hmm.
or receiving downloads or messages, however you want to put it, that can actually help us grow as well. I know in writing, that's, like I said, my medium. So sometimes
Mm-hmm.
if I am like maybe having writer's block or feeling like a lack of creativity, I'll just pick up the pen and just start writing. And
Mm-hmm.
then once I'm done, I'll go back and read it. And it's usually always something that I need to hear to pull me out of whatever state I'm in. Um,
Mm-hmm.
how does art help you receive channels or downloads?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when we are creating something, right, we are connected to ourselves, and that I see it as that part also connects me to everything. So I'm like more, as I'm more present, I'm also more open to receive messages. And often the message only becomes clear when I'm finished and I'm looking at it, or maybe even when someone is helping me, like with some questions about it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's about it. Because my mind will try to understand what I just created and it cannot make any sense. And then some other questions, let's go a little bit deeper. It's like, that's it. And I will know when I felt the meaning, because it's like a full body experience. It's like something clicks, right?
Mm-mm, absolutely. And yeah, I totally, like I said, yeah, you don't really get it until you're finished and you're like, whoa, okay. And it's almost like you check out logically, analytically, and
Yeah.
you tune in spiritually, energetically, and yeah, as we said, that feeling of oneness, interconnectedness. We just kind of like draw in the energies and really transform. And that's my favorite way to get messages. Whenever I'm stuck, I just be like, all right, just tell me what I need to know.
Yes. Yeah, great. And sometimes when we're totally lost, it's about like, okay, I'm lost in my mind. I just do something else creative without even, like having a purpose, or just only that you shift your focus into something might actually help you get into a flow again.
Yes, I love that. And so, uh, one last question.
Hmm.
I was thinking about the psychology of happiness recently, and really trying to think about, as we spoke about the mind protecting us and creating these experiences, and I guess in a sense, trying to stay in a state of homeostasis, although life will bring us up and down, but
Hmm.
to keep that constant flow. Um, so, what do you think about the mind when we position ourselves to focus towards joy and happiness? Like, what do you think? Like, we talked about rewiring the brain.
Hmm.
How does that play out in the mind?
Well, I think we feed what we put our attention to, right? So if I'm all the time feeding sadness or anger, that is gonna grow, and it's the same with joy. That's actually what's happening when I do my laughter yoga workshops. Like we fake it, right? But then at a certain moment, there is like so much joy and connection, and the heart is opening, and it's like about training yourself. Like there is more. Like I can be a vessel for that as well, right? It's opening up yourself for the joy. And you can do that by your focus, like with your mind, like even as a mantra. You can also do that by with the movement and the joy and so on. There are many ways. And I think that the mind often has a kind of an addiction to always go to what we're used to, like go to all the depressive things and all the fears, but honestly, does it make us happy? No. And there we have a conscious choice to make. Like, how do we want to live? Because reality, I mean, the outside reality doesn't really change often with our mind, but our inner reality changes a
Yes.
lot when we can shift that. And also, as a ripple effect, then afterwards, also what happens around us can shift as well.
Yes. And as you said that, like, I know to a lot of people it may sound like, oh, you just make it sound so simple, but
It
it
is.
really, yeah, it really is, and it's almost like magic once you really like do the work, and then you start to see it play out in your life. That's when things connect. But you have to do it. That's the only thing. You
Yes,
gotta just push through and do the work. Yeah,
totally. I think and it starts with a decision, right? Yeah.
the power of choice. Yeah, that's been another theme going on. The power of choice. We all have the choice to decide what our future is going to look like the next few minutes. Like I said, because the present moment, whatever we do now, dictates the future.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Totally.
Although, it's always uncertain. But it's like, yeah, the duality of spirituality. It's like, yeah, you can do it like this, but then there's this. So just be, focused on yourself and in that flow state, and everything will work out effortlessly, like magic.
Exactly.
Yes, and I do believe it's true. I just, like you said, it's a practice. We have to put in the work. And so,
Yeah.
with your practice and how you help people, um,
Hmm.
what is your favorite way to help? Like, what does your favorite session look like?
Good question. I just love it when someone is open to whatever and we flow. There is like not really a lot prepared because we are co-creators also, and it's about like the relationship in the therapy as well. And then is actually when the magic happens, when we both are able to let go, when I'm not too stuck in my mind, when I'm not like, I need to, do some, like say something intelligent. No, when I am just present with the person, and when also the person can just be in the moment with me, that's when it just like, it's more likely to for like healing moments to happen, because I do think like in those moments I am a channel, like I say certain things, and then I'm like, wow, that was exactly what that person needed to hear, but I could never prepare that, right?
Mm, yeah. That spontaneity, that, like you said, being in the present moment, being aware, it really opens us up and allows us to connect with all the energies around us and just really, like you said, be that channel, that median, for divine messages, divine guidance. And I just love that about life, right? It's so many resources available to us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't ever have to feel alone, although it can get to that point, but there's always, something available to us. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's important for people to know, especially dealing with, like, I dealt with depression and anxiety for most of my life. And
Mm-hmm.
it came due to feeling isolated, right? Because I've been on, like, my spiritual journey my entire life. And it's like,
Yeah.
as a kid, people are like, we don't want to hear you talk about, is God real and what does it feel like after death? It's like, why are you asking these questions? And so that kind of just led me down a path. But then I realized opening up myself to the power of unconditional love, of God,
Mm-hmm.
the universe, or whatever, that interconnected feeling. Uh, After that, I never felt alone. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, I just want to ask you, like, if you could tell people one thing about really when you feel alone, how to find that connection, with something greater outside of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think sometimes that definitely can be a search, especially if someone doesn't is like agnostic,
Mm,
right? I see that usually are the people who are struggling the most, because they have nothing to lean back on. But then in such a moment, I think there's always nature. For
yes.
example, it's like bigger than us, it's alive, it's there. If we believe it or not, it's there, we see it. Yeah. So then it would be like, okay, just connect, like lay down a little ball if you feel really bad and depressed, and connect with like feeling supported. Like you can give your weight to the earth, for example, and you will feel like a certain moment, like, oh, I just feel a little bit lighter, just a tiny bit, right? And it's like, okay, you're opening up for something to support you to come through, right? And then it's going to be easier to connect to different parts of ourselves, because I think if we feel alone, it's because maybe we are alone, but still it's not because you're alone that you feel alone. So like feeling alone, it's because there is a disconnection, like between your, your heart, your soul, your body, and so on. So how can you reconnect with that? How can you like feel into your heart? And maybe it is through the body first, right? That's with many people, like, and that's where the movement comes in. It's easier through the movement to connect with the body, and when you're connected to the body, it's easier to connect with the emotions again, and then maybe it's easier to connect with the needs, and then maybe it's easier to connect with the purpose,
Mm,
and then it's maybe easier to open yourself for other things out there as well. So I sometimes feel like it's a chain, and it's just like finding where you can tap into that chain again.
yeah, that's perfectly put. And definitely, like you said, everyone can relate to nature. It's there, it's
Yeah.
not going anywhere. And that is the best way to, uh, see outside of yourself, right?
Mhm.
Because there's life all around us. And it's really interesting when you are open how nature really accepts you and embraces you. I've been having like
Yeah.
this whole situation go on with birds right now. I'm like,
Oh.
it's cool, but it's also kind of weird, but I love it. So, if you could leave everyone with one last message, uh, what would you say to them in this moment?
Okay, whatever comes up is like trust, right?
Mm,
Even like trust that it will shift, trust that it will be okay, trust that there will be an opening again, that it's, I think that often is what we're all lacking. And I'm also speaking for myself. I think it's almost my biggest life lesson is like about trust.
mm,
So yeah, like how can you find, let's what's the one little step towards that trust that you can take in this moment.
Yeah, I feel that. Trust is a hard one for everyone, right?
Yes,
It's like
well,
trust that it's gonna be okay. It's like
yeah, right.
exactly. My biggest life lessons is definitely patience.
Yeah,
It kind of goes hand in hand, you know. But patience for me, because I'm like, go, go, go. Like I trust now, make it happen.
yeah, totally. But that's just not trusting, right? Like if it
Right.
needs to happen right now.
Yeah, I know. I always have to reel it back in, like, oh, just take a second, breathe. It will happen in divine timing. Yeah,
Exactly,
but
divine
yeah,
timing.
yes, divine timing is like my arch nemesis. But I love it.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
if people wanted to connect with you, they wanted to work with you, how would they reach you?
Yes. Well, you can find me through Facebook, Instagram, with the name like Moving Hearts Therapy. Also, my website, www.movingheartstherapy.com. I think that would be the easiest ways. And then there you can find like how to connect with me through DM or through email or Linktree, or if you want to join a workshop or an event or therapy or whatever it is that's going on in that moment. Yeah.
Awesome. And lastly, where does the universe take you next?
Well, I am going this Thursday, so within a few days, I'm going to Panama to a tribal gathering, which is at the beach, the jungle, where lots of beautiful people are gathering and we're learning and connecting about different kinds of way of living and ceremonies and workshops and conferences. And for me, it's like a global family that I'm having there. I'll be going there for the fifth time, and I just don't want to miss it again. So I really am excited to go there.
That sounds amazing and truly, truly awesome. And
It
so
is.
I just want to thank you for connecting with us today.
My
Guys,
pleasure.
this has been another awesome transmission because remember, this is not just a podcast, these are transmissions from the ethereal. So, thank you guys, and until next time, awaken, ascend, activate.
Bye.
Ooh, bookmark their frequency. That was divine alignment.
Noted. Sending universal RSVP.
Where to next, Arden?
Next stop, the Temple of Sacred Fire.